Hello, everybody, and welcome into our first draft-centric video here at the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. Mostly usually do it on Prospect Corner, but we're going to do a whole bunch of videos here as we're going, and we're going to start with some predictions for some bold predictions, not just regular predictions, for the 2024 NHL Draft. And I'm joined in by Michael Ostrower here from the Hockey Writers, who put out this article we're going to go through. Thanks, Michael, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, draft is exciting time, especially if you're covering prospects and you love going through that. So, and we're only about a week and a half now away from the draft, so it's coming up quick. So these predictions are gonna we'll see if any of them come true. So Michael, I'll throw it over to you for the first prediction that you got, and it is on a Canadian team. So this is a great way to start. So give us your first prediction here.
Yeah, so the Toronto Maple Leafs, I mean, every draft, you don't know where they're going to go, especially last year when they took Easton Cohen. It was, very, nobody saw it coming, and it's looking like a steal. He just had an incredible season last year. And with their first round pick this year, I have them taking a defenseman, Stiga Solberg. And this is a pick that is definitely a bit of a wild card because nobody knows the direction the team's going to go. They need defense, but they are also trying to contend now. They have uncertainty with Marner, and if they do trade him, they don't nobody knows what they could get in return. So it's hard to predict what they're going to do with the pick. But I have them taking a defenseman, and Solberg's projected to go really anywhere from 35 to 75, depending on the site and the scout. And I think that with what we saw at the combine by our team of insiders from the Hockey Writers and their interviews, it seems like the Leafs have a lot of interest in the prospect, and they don't have any other selections until the fourth round. So I think we could see them reach early there. And I think it would honestly be a great pick. His Schulberg's stock has been rising a lot as of late, and it's hard to predict exactly what a team's going to do 23 picks into the draft, but I feel like there's a really good chance that they go that direction.
Mhm. Well, yeah, like you said, his draft stock's increased quite a bit since. And I mean, he was projected, I don't know if he was projected all the time to be in the first round. I mean, now he's kind of starting to become a guy that could potentially even move up more than 23 and get drafted in the mid part of the first round. So I mean, I don't know. He may not even get to the Maple Leafs at that point. And that would be even a more bold prediction going even higher in the first round. And yeah, he really impressed at the combine. So some other teams may be more interested in him now, and we'll see if Toronto even gets a chance to draft him. But he's definitely on their radar. They met with him, and definitely have interest. So we're gonna have to wait and see if he's available and if the Maple Leafs do pick him.
Mhm.
All right, next up, this is on Consta Helenius. So what do you got for prediction for him?
Yeah, so I've loved him this entire year, and really the past 2 years. I think he's such a complete player. I think he projects well to join the NHL, but so many fans and scouts online are just saying that he doesn't, have any one dominant trait, and that could be a reason he falls, which I think, in my opinion, is crazy because I think you just go best player available, and I have him really as a top 10 player. I don't know how anyone could have him outside of that. But just like we saw in the writers mock draft by the Hockey Writers, he fell all the way into the 20s. I think there's a good chance that happens in real life. There's so much uncertainty really after celebrating at one. Nobody knows what's going to happen this draft, and he could be someone that just kind of slips through the cracks, and all of a sudden he's available in the 20s. And I mean, obviously, whoever drafts him at that point will be getting great value. But I think this is so bold because there's a very real chance we see him go top 10, and it's hard to see him slip outside of the top 16. But he is a name to keep an eye on, in my opinion, that could just slip all the way.
Well, you're looking at so many defensemen that are starting to come like not Zane, Zeev Buium has
Mhm.
been talked about being maybe potentially getting picked by the Anaheim Ducks, and that's a top three pick,
Yeah.
and that pushes everything down. And then you're going Helenius may not drop into the 20s, but there is a potential where some of these defensemen go earlier. We already talked about Solberg maybe taking a jump, and that pushes more guys down. So I mean, everything can happen, and we've seen it in previous drafts where weird things like Tyler Boucher going in to the Senators in the in the top half, and that made everything get a little bit off. And Barrett Hayden back in, I can't remember what draft that was, but he messed that stuff up at the top too. So you don't know. I mean, that's it's such the uncertainty of the draft, right? All right, next up, we're going to a guy that potentially has been talked about in the top five, but you say he's not going to, he could potentially drop out of that, and that's Anton Silayev. What do you got for that?
This is definitely the boldest take. And I'm not entirely convinced, it will happen because he's 6'7". He is so good defensively, one of the best in the KHL, and he's young. He only has 2 years left on his contract, so he'll be in North America in 2 years, assuming all goes to plan. And he is a complete player. Obviously, he dominated offensively to start the year and then kind of leveled out, but he's someone that every team would want in their prospect pool. But like I said, I think just with the uncertainty regarding Russian and NHL, kind of relations, and his 2 year contract could deter a few teams. I think some teams might just be going for positional value, and with kind of where we're going, with the teams who are there, I think if Columbus doesn't take him, and I don't see the Canadians taking another defenseman. Maybe they do. But it's just all of a sudden he could be kind of slipping outside the top five, and teams could get worried, and all of a sudden he's available at 9 or 10 for the Flames. And it's hard to see how the draft will unfold, but I think out of any of the top 4 or 5 prospects, he probably has the best chance to slip to that 10 range.
Yeah, I mean, whoever gets Silayev, I mean, the thing is he won't drop out of the 15. I mean, he's going to be drafted in that range. It's just he may not be drafted in the top, what we're talking about, the top five, top eight, and could even maybe fall out of the top 10. I
Mhm.
don't know. I mean, that's going to be a pretty good pick for whoever gets him there, because he's going to be a heck of a defenseman in the NHL. I mean, he can skate. He's, like you said, he's big at 6'7", and for a guy that's that big to be able to skate as well as he can, that's a big asset to have. And a lot of teams are going to be looking at him. I think Utah could be a big part, like you said in the article, could potentially be a team that grabs him. They've already shown that they like those big Russian defensemen last draft. So he may be on their radar, but there's other guys that they may want to go after first too. So lots of uncertainty in that top part of the draft. So Silayev could definitely drop out of the top eight, like you said.
Mhm.
All right, let's go to Connor Bedard's running mate from last season and kind of fallen off, Tanner Howe. You've got a pretty bold prediction that he's going to fall out, not just the first round, but even further.
Yeah, I mean it's so hard because I really believe in him as a prospect, and I think he has the tools to get to the NHL and be a very strong middle six forward, potentially top six with some power play time. But I think his offensive production, with the loss of Bedard to the Pats, is just going to scare many teams. And you don't want to see a prospect regress in their draft year, especially, in a league like the WHL where, you're kind of expected to take a big offensive jump your draft year and then your first year after being a draft eligible. And it could be worrisome for teams. And I think with just the lack of consensus throughout this entire draft, I mean, there's probably 50, 60 guys who could realistically go in the first round, and Hal being one of them. I think if he slips out of the first round and we get to the second, teams might be going more for the reaches from the middle rounds that they could fear aren't available. And just like that, he's another name that slips.
Mm-hmm. Go dropping to the third round. I don't know if he's going to drop that far. I mean, I'd be really surprised, but he could be in that last part of the second round and almost the third round. I mean, that could happen. And we were talking about for sure a first round pick after last year's
Mm.
production. But the thing is, we knew he was going to regress without Connor Bedard. Connor Bedard's a generational talent. Playing with him, I mean, you're obviously going to have a bump in your production, and that's just we knew it was going to happen. But for him to regress, I mean, he didn't regress a whole ton, but he did regress, and we'll see if that's going to end up deterring some teams. But whoever gets him, even it's a late round pick. My gosh, they're going to pretty good talent down there. First round caliber, I think, and third round pick would be a pretty big surprise. All right, let's move to an American, Teddy Stiga, who really impressed at the draft combine and may have boosted his stock. And you say he could be selected in the top 20. Why do you think that?
I think he's just a great prospect. I've loved him this entire year. I think it's been a weak year for the U.S. national development team and that whole program. And outside of Yzerman, there really there aren't a lot of prospects there aren't really any other prospects who are considered to definitely be going in the first round. I think Stiga just I think he's a great skater. I think he has solid vision, and I think he'll go to Boston College next year. He might be playing alongside Hagens or whoever he's
Mhm.
alongside. It's just such a phenomenal program, and I really believe in his path to making the NHL. I think he's a well-rounded prospect. He has pretty high upside for someone that could be going in the late first, early second, or even later. And the team's going to bite on that. I think we've seen a lot of names. I mean, someone like Bennett Seneke, who's a great prospect, and people are having him go in the top 10, but nobody's talking about Stiga. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, I think it's like you said at the combine, he impressed, and there's going to be a team who reaches on him early, no matter what, in my opinion. I think he's definitely going to go earlier than many expect, whether it be in the top 20, who knows? But I'd be very surprised if he's available by the start of the second.
Mhm. Yeah, a playoff team's probably going to grab him, and that's kind of. I always love these playoff teams getting these really high quality prospects, and but yeah, he could definitely do that. Do I want to ask you this though? Does he go? I'm not sure if this would be a pretty bold prediction. Going ahead of Cole Iserman.
I was thinking about that. I think I really like Yzerman as a prospect. I think people are shying away from him, and I think because they think he's just one dimensional. So it's possible. I think I wouldn't put money on it, but I think it's possible. Just a team compare the two and think that Stiga has a higher chance of reaching the
Mhm.
NHL, and maybe that the difference in the shot quality is worth it, considering the difference in really every other aspect of the game. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think that would be more so a result of Yzerman probably falling into the
Yeah.
20s than Stiga going in the top 16 or so. But like you said to start, you really never know in the draft. Every year there's, a handful of shocking moves, and I think that could be one of them, definitely.
Yeah. Iserman has been talked about being that very one-dimensional type scorer, and Stiga looks like he could be a bit more well-rounded in that. So I mean, yeah, it is gonna be interesting. Iserman's a big name. We don't know where he's gonna go. I mean, a team may take a chance because of his shot at a higher point in the draft, but there's so many other forwards that are like, well, maybe they're a bit better. They may have a higher upside
Yeah.
than just goal scoring. So, but I mean, Iserman's gonna go in the first round. It
Yeah.
is where is going to be the question. All right, finally, let's talk about some goaltending. I mean, goaltenders aren't high. There's no surefire first round pick. I don't think there's going to be one going in the first round, but again, you never know. Saying about Ilya Nabokov and Carter George, one of two of the top goaltenders, but you're saying that one of these guys could go over the other. Nabokov, who has been pretty good, and Carter George has always been one of the higher end guys. But George has always been the kind of the talk, being one of the first ones off the board. You're saying Nabokov's gonna be first. Why is that?
He just had an incredible season in the KHL. I mean, he won KHL MVP. He led his team kind of throughout the whole season in dominant fashion. He's a big presence in the crease. He's not super tall, but he plays much bigger than his size. He has a strong glove. He's very fast going side to side and up and down. He's a very complete goaltender, and he keeps his team in it every game. And one goaltender that he reminds me a lot of is Semyon Varlamov,
Hmm.
fellow Russian, where he might not have that upside of winning a Vezina trophy or kind of stealing games for teams like some of the elite goaltenders, but he's someone that is a lot more consistent, which historically you don't really get in goaltenders, and it's hard to predict. And he's someone that can really reach the NHL in probably just one or two more seasons, in my opinion. And of course, I think the big concern is the fact that this is his third year as a draft eligible. So teams have already, scouted him the past 2, 3, 4 seasons and passed on him. But just because of the strides, not just in his numbers and performance, but just in the eye test and how he looks as a goaltender in one of the best professional leagues in the world, I think a team very well could reach on him in the 30s and 40s, and that doesn't take away from Carter George as a prospect. Like you said, it's so hard to predict where goaltenders go, and I feel like Nabokov is a name that people should have in the back of their minds and shouldn't be surprised if he goes in the top 40, 50.
Mhm. Well, the thing is about Nabokov or goaltenders in general, it sometimes, actually all the time, goaltenders take a while to develop. I mean, you don't get the Carey Prices very often where they could jump into the NHL 18 years old and be pretty good to start. I mean, that's generational. I mean, there's not many goaltenders that do this. Talking about Vasilevsky, he was a late first round pick,
Yeah.
and I believe, yeah, he was. And that he has ended up one of the best goaltenders in the league now.
Mhm.
It's, and I believe some goaltenders have been drafted way. Lundqvist was drafted in the sixth round, I believe, and it's like you don't know these goaltenders where you get them, and they could end up being one of your best in franchise history. So we'll see where these kind of guys go. One final question though for goaltending: do you see a goaltender going in the first round?
I don't think so. I think, like the theme of this draft, what we said, there's really no consensus for really anywhere. But I just think that there are enough players that have kind of top 15, 16 potential to be taken that are going to slip into the 20s. And it's just hard to see, like we said, the player like Stiga, who could be available, let's say pick 25, 26. It's hard to imagine a team takes a goaltender over someone like that just because of the uncertainty with drafting goaltenders. But I think we'll probably see one right around the turn at the midpoint in the 30s
Mm.
to 40s.
Yeah, I see that. Like Ryerson Leanders has also been talked about being one of the goaltenders going first, but you don't know where they're going to go. Like last draft, we had goaltenders going in the, I believe the first one that went wasn't anticipated, and it's very difficult to figure out where these goaltenders are going to go, and we'll see what ends up happening when the draft gets going. But thanks, Michael, for coming on our first video here about the draft, and we'll keep talking about it. We're going to have a bunch of we're going to go through all the top 10 positional rankings and have videos out for those. And we're going to have mock drafts. We're going to have a bunch of videos coming up to the draft. So, Michael, maybe get you on for one of those. And but thanks for coming on and going through this article with us here.
I would love to. And thanks for having me.
All right. Well, make sure to check out everything at thehockeyWriters.com. We got our NHL draft guide live. We've got over 130 prospect profiles there. We've got features, like I say, the top 10 articles. We got this one that's out there too, and that'll be a link in the description if you want to read about these predictions. Follow along as we're talking about them. But yeah, make sure to check out all our coverage because we're going to have a ton of it on draft day. We have got live articles coming out as the picks are being done, and of course analysis from all the teams heading up to it as well. So make sure to check out everything there, and we'll see you on the next draft video.